Alrighty, today we are going to talk about fertilizing orchids. This is a longer video because there's so much information, there's so many different products that people can get that everybody's usually confused by it on what to get, how to get them, and different things like that. So let's go over the different kinds of fertilizers and the different nutrients that are in each fertilizer and what they mean. So to do this, I snagged a whiteboard from our office to draw out all the different things. So let me show you all what each of the different numbers mean and how it can benefit your plant and get the results that you want. All right, so the big three for fertilizers are going to be nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Okay, so that's what each of the numbers mean on your fertilizers. Like this one right here is a 19, 4, and 23 fertilizer. Okay, so that's nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. That's what each of those numbers mean, and each of those numbers contribute different things to your plant. With the nitrogen, that'll be the first number in your thing. So that would be the 19 on this orchid fertilizer. So what nitrogen does is it contributes to leaf and root growth. So if you have like an orchid that, like the clearance ones that you get at the grocery store that look pretty sad, that have one leaf hanging on, that have like the roots are kind of iffy, and you want to try to save that plant, nitrogen is going to be one of those nutrients that you need to give that orchid. Now there is bad kinds of nitrogen, which you have to be aware of. So when you're looking at the ingredients for your fertilizers, it'll tell you what kind of nitrogen they're using in the mixture to provide that nutrient. So for this one, it's nitrate and ammoniacal or something. Okay, those are the two good ones. Okay, you want the nitrile or the nitrate or ammoniacal or ammoniacal. Y'all's guess is as good as mine. I wrote it out there so you can see. Now you want to avoid urea. Urea is found in a lot of different orchid fertilizers, and it's not absorbed very good by the roots, and can lead to things like burning of your roots, which is one of those things that you really want to avoid when you're fertilizing your orchid, because you can do more harm than you can good sometimes. So keep that in mind. The next one we have is phosphorus. Okay, so that is for roots development and different things like that. Helps that. Also blooming, reblooming, okay, flowers. Okay, if you want your orchid to bloom, they have to have phosphorus. Okay, so mostly orchids don't need a lot of it, they just need some. Like this one's a 19 for nitrogen, but only a 4 for the middle number, which is the phosphorus. Okay, so phosphorus is one of those things that you need to have it in your fertilizer if you want your orchids to bloom. Okay, the other things are great, but if you're lacking phosphorus, they're gonna have a really hard time blooming. They don't need a lot, they just need some. So like this one's a 19.4, this one is a 13.3, 15. This one is a 1.2, 1.6, or 1.06, and a 0.3. So we'll talk about these different ones. And the last thing that we have is potassium. Potassium is one of those things that your orchids need for health, for stress, for dealing with stresses as far as in like temperature changes, nutrient changes, if they're not getting fertilized as often as they should. They need it for, what else? Oh yeah, for diseases. So like if it's under a lot of stress, like one of those ones that you save from the grocery store and it's stressed out and it's prone to diseases and stuff, you want to make sure you're giving it enough potassium so that it can stay healthy and kind of keep up with that. So basically there's different kinds of fertilizers. There's well-rounded fertilizers that have everything. There's certain fertilizers that are higher in different things. It's all what your goal is for your plant. Okay, so let's go over some of the different ones that I have or that I've used for my orchids and kind of go over which ones I like and dislike and why. I have a couple different ones that I have been using. This one is from Repot Me. It is a 13-3-15 kind of all around fertilizer. Like this one pretty good. This is one that I got at the orchid show from a small nursery, or they're from River Valley Orchids. And this is for specifically for people that are using tap water or well water for their orchids to water them. So this is a 19:4-23 ratio. So I mean, both of these are a very like well-rounded fertilizer that you can use for your plants. Now, I did buy something else that I've tried before. It's this liquid, like Orchid Love, World's Best Orchid for Food liquid fertilizer, okay? So this is a kelp-based fertilizer, so it has kelp and liquid fish, bloom boosters, plant hormones, it has a whole lot of stuff in here. It is basically a 1.2, 1.06, and a 0.39. That's the ratio of this guy. Now, word of caution, this smells terrible, okay? Like, the first time that I used it, Josh was like, what happened in our house? I'm like, yeah, I know, it smells terrible, it's awful, it reeks, okay? So please keep that in mind. If you're using a liquid kelp fish fertilizer, you will stink up your whole house. So these are 3 that I've tried and used before. I mean, overall, the biggest thing to avoid is the urea for your nitrogen, and it usually just says it right on the top. And this one has little ingredients list right here, and it's the ammoniacal nitrogen and nitrate. So both of these are very good for them. This doesn't say, but since it's from like natural sources like the kelp and the fish and different things like that, I'm sure it's more of the readily available nitrogen versus the urea, which is not as good for your plants. So those are the kinds that I have used. And now we will go over how we fertilize them, because there is some tips and tricks to that you need to be aware of, so you don't burn the roots, which is very, very easy to do. And raise your hand if you've done it. Me, I've done it. I'm guilty. So let me show you how we can avoid that at all costs. In my previous video, I went over how to water your plants, right? We soak them, we make sure that their roots are all nice and green, that they have gotten thoroughly soaked through, and that the roots have absorbed, and they're nice. They're these really nice little green caterpillar roots, okay? That's what I like to refer them as. These air roots, guys, okay, these roots that come out that go all crazy, please do not cut them off. Okay, this is a happy orchid. We want him to have air roots. It gives them the opportunity to take moisture out of the air and absorb it. And this is a sign of a very healthy plant. Please do not cut them off. Okay, I've had people say that, asking if they could cut them off. Please do not. Please do not do that. That'll make your plant like really sad, because it worked really hard to grow these. And if you just snip them off because they're ugly or they're out of control, that's not nice to the plant. So please do not cut your air roots off. Okay, so the biggest thing with fertilizing your orchid is you want to make sure their roots are really nice and green before you put the fertilizer on them, okay? So you want them to be thoroughly soaked, and then so that when you pour the fertilizer mixture through it, the plant can absorb it easily, okay? When these are not green and they're silver and they're not fully watered, this is when you burn those roots, guys, okay? So if you poured fertilizer over this very dry orchid, it's going to burn your plant because it's not ready to absorb that fertilizer. So you just really want to be careful with that. Now, frequency of fertilizing your orchid. There's 2 different ways that people will fertilize them, and you can choose either way. Both work as long as you're making sure to prep your orchid roots before you fertilize them, okay? So there's 2 different ways that you can fertilize your orchids. You could do the lovely saying, fertilize it weekly. So use a diluted amount of fertilizer once a week, or you can fertilize them at the full rate once a month. Okay, so you do the high concentration once a month, or you can do a low concentration once a week. I will do a few words that when you fertilize them, when they're blooming, you have a chance to stress them a little bit, especially if you do burn their roots. So I would just do like a word of caution if your orchid's in full bloom. I would definitely do a much more diluted fertilizer while they're blooming, just because you don't want to stress them out, because as soon as an orchid gets stressed, those blooms go whoop and they're gone. So what I like to do is the weekly. I feel like it gives me more of a buffer to not screw it up. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I got a quart of water here, not a gallon, so everything's gonna get divided into 4 quarts in a gallon. Maybe I can do math. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take an 1/8 teaspoon. So instead of a 1/4 of a teaspoon for a whole gallon, I'm gonna do an 1/8 of a teaspoon for a quart. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dissolve. I'm going to use this Feed Me, this Repot Me one. I've used it a couple different times, like it pretty good. So we're just going to take and put an 1/8 of a teaspoon of fertilizer in this quart jar. And you can switch it up. You can do experiments. You can water a few of your plants with one and a few with a different kind, and just see which kind your plants respond with the best. This one is that 13-3-15, so it's kind of a lower numbers versus the 19-4-23 ones. So we're just going to stir this up and make sure that it all dissolves. I probably should have done this off the video, so I made sure it was fully dissolved before I started this, but hey, what you gonna do? So it's still dissolving. You want to make sure that all those little granules are like fully dissolved. I guess that's what I get for trying to crush it. So basically, we'll just let this dissolve, and then I will show you how I water them with fertilizer. Alrighty, my fertilizer finally dissolved. Only took like 3 minutes to do. Anywho, so what you're going to do is, now that you have your fertilizer dissolved in some water, is you're going to pull your orchid that's been soaking for the appropriate amount of time to definitely plump those leaves up, or those roots up. So what you're going to do is you're going to pour this through this orchid, and that's it. You're going to make sure you kind of get all the sides of the orchid, but you don't want to get it on the leaves because you will burn the leaves. They are not equipped for that. So we're just going to take this bowl, and I'm going to pour it through the orchid like this on both sides, and let it drain out the bottom. And it's really that easy. And then I'm just going to take and sit this orchid on a lid, like a plastic lid, to make sure it drains out, because you don't want it to like soak in there. So we'll do another one, so I'll drain it out of the clean water. So this one we're just going to this is in a sphagnum moss substrate instead of like a bark, so it kind of holds water like crazy. So I just kind of squeezed out the moss like that, just kind of drain it a little bit easier, and then I'm going to take and I'm going to pour the fertilizer through that. And see, this one is one that's really good to flush your roots and stuff after a couple fertilizers, because this sphagnum moss will hold the fertilizer and can cause root burning if it's not flushed out with clean water every once in a while, like once a month maybe. So fertilize that guy, easy peasy. So it's literally that simple to fertilize your orchids. It's not hard. It's just kind of knowing what kind is going to be the best for your plants and how to fertilize them, because like I said, do not pour fertilizer water on unwatered orchid roots. Okay, that's gonna just cause a whole lot of issues, and it's gonna burn the orchid roots and all kinds of stuff. So let's just not do that. So anywho, these guys are fertilized, that guy's gonna get a good soak, and then he's gonna get fertilized too. So I hope that was helpful, at least a little bit. I am in no means an expert on anything that I'm doing. I've just done it a while, and this is what I found works the best for me, because I think the lower concentration, the weekly is easier for me to do, because I know that like my margin of error is probably a lot lower because you're not dealing with those high concentrations of fertilizer. So if you're starting out, at least do a very dilute fertilizer, okay? That'll help your plants out more. Most of the time, people don't even fertilize them. It's such like a daunting thing that they don't even bother. So if you're just fertilizing them a little bit, it's going to be way better for them than nothing. So I hope that was helpful, at least a little bit, and answer some questions about fertilizer and your orchids and different things. And I hope that you all will give it a try and won't feel so overwhelmed when looking for different fertilizers and things and actually physically fertilizing your orchids, because it's really that simple. I usually do it over a sink so that I don't have to do all of these bowls and different things. Like, I'll soak them in the sink, then I'll pour the fertilizer through them on the other side of the sink, and it goes right down the drain, and I don't have to worry about all these bowls. But since we're on the camera, I thought I would do the bowls and just show you how easy it is to do. So I hope you all will give it a try, and let me know if you have any questions. I will do my best to answer them as best I can. Like I said, not an expert here. This is just what has kind of worked for me.